In today's video, I'm going to give you a throwing mechanics breakdown of Sarah Davis, who's a member of the U.S. Women's Slow Pitch National Team. Sarah reached out to me on TikTok. We have a correspondence. I asked her hitting questions because she's a really impressive hitter, and we kind of just chat slow pitch here and there. And she asked me recently if I would do a breakdown of her mechanics, because one of the things that I find most impressive about her as an athlete, besides just playing on the slow pitch national team, is that she's never satisfied with just how good she is today. She really wants to keep getting better. And that includes every aspect of her game, which she reached out and said, hey, I just want to continue to throw a little bit harder. Can you give me some tips and we can kind of collaborate on the video? So I said, absolutely. If you don't follow Sarah, her handle is @SarahHelen. I'll link to it on the screen and below in the description. But she's a sponsored athlete by Victus. She's a Victus signature athlete, so they call it. And she's a 3-time USSSA first team all-conference player. So just really impressive in the game of slow pitch. All right, so first, let me explain how I break down mechanics. I always ask for 5 different views. Dead on the front, straight from the back, from the left side, from the right side, and then front at a slight angle. That gives me the different views where I can see everything that's going on. Just one angle never gives me quite enough context. And I also like to see some full speed throws, and I also like to get radar reading so I just know what we're working with velocity-wise. So Sarah provided all that content for me to analyze. And one thing you'll see today is that I'm gonna use myself as a comparison to her. I don't like doing that, that's not my preference. But in today's game, with NIL rights being worth so much money, it's really not a safe thing from a legal perspective for me to use other athletes, whether they're major leaguers, D1 softball players, to compare to someone in my video. So I'm going to use myself. It's not my favorite thing to do, but also I can throw a softball extremely hard, and I still represent overall the biggest checkpoints of good throwing mechanics. But I do want to make sure you understand that I am never trying to make other players into mini Dans. I'm just always trying to help players figure out how their body works best within the confines of the biggest checkpoints in the throwing mechanics that everyone has to do to throw the ball well. All right, so let's start with velocity. So she sent me some video. She's 58 to 60 in most of these throws from the outfield. My goal working with high school players was always to get every single player by their junior year to be able to throw 58 to 62 or so. I think the goal is 63 plus for everyone across the board, because then you're gonna be able to make a lot of plays on the run from lower arm slots. You can pretty much play any position if you throw at least 63 plus. So that's our goal for Sarah, is to add 3 to 5 miles per hour, which if she's diligent and works hard with some of these things, she can absolutely do that over the next 6 months to a year. For reference, players in the very top percentile will get well into the 70s. So you'll see some female athletes throwing up to 75 or so, which is extremely impressive. Even today at age 40, I can throw a softball around 80 miles an hour. When I was still pitching professionally, I could get up to around 84 or so. So there's a pretty big drop off throwing a softball compared to a much smaller, much lighter baseball, just as a reference point. All right, first let's start with things that Sarah does well. So number 1, her footwork is terrific. She crushes the pro step. She has a great step behind, has a nice long stride. That's terrific. Her weight shift is also very, very good. Sarah also has the uphill shoulders that I look for, which is basically when she has a little more weight in her back leg, it gives you a little bit of upward tilt that you can then shift into your front side. That's a huge part of proper weight shift. So I always look for shoulder tilt when players are here. It becomes a really big problem. And she also gets completely closed off and has very good shoulder hip separation. So shoulder hip separation is when you land and your hips are going slightly forward, but your upper body is rotated slightly away to create this rubber band effect. Her elbow joint angle is good. So what we're looking for is when it gets to this position here, she should be 90 degrees or a little bit less, not crazy less, and definitely not more. We have like an obtuse angle, like a 120 degree angle like this. So Sarah's angle is a little bit inside 90, which is perfect. She also has very good arm timing, which is where's her arm during our stride. So when her front foot plants down, her arm is about parallel or slightly above, which is right where we want it for a position player throw.
All right, quickly, let's look at how her arm accelerates. So she's got just a little bit of bend in her elbow that we'll want to work on. But overall, she does a very good job with this. And lots of softball players, you see really significant bends in the elbow. And Sarah gets above the ball actually quite well. But there is a little bit of work to be done here. So the angle of her forearm needs to closely match the other line I made, which you can see between her 2 shoulders. So her forearm is a little more vertical than the line made by her shoulders. And that indicates that she's slightly pushing the ball.
And then her follow through goes all the way down to her back hip, and she bends her elbow slightly at the very finish of her follow through, which helps release pressure through the bicep and the shoulder. And her glove arm action is excellent. So the glove arm will swim out and then it will clear the body and either fall down like this next to the body, or it will tuck. Either one's fine. What we don't want to see is the glove in front of the body on an overhand throw or spinning out way out here. So her glove arm looks terrific. All right, things that I want to improve about Sarah's mechanics. All right, number one, I want her arm action when her hands separate to lift less and retract more. We need as much scap retraction as possible. This helps get our arm to hitch up with our upper body, and it keeps us from pushing the ball, and she has a little too much lift in her arm action.
So from behind a thrower, we can see what their throwing arm does. So Sarah's drops pretty much straight down with a pretty long arm. It lifts with the long arm, which we don't need. Then it starts to bend at the elbow with a little bit of scap retraction, and then it accelerates through. And this is why she has a little bit of push in her elbow. When the elbow doesn't pull far enough behind the body, it jumps in front, and that's when we unfortunately push the ball. All right, so look at my elbow on the left. See how it's already starting to pull back and I don't lock my arm out? And then here, this is the big thing. All high-level throwers pull their elbow way behind their body, almost like they've got wings. So you can see with mine on the left, it's very far back. And then that allows me to flip my arm right up into throwing position while my hips go first, and then my arm just flies forward, and it's easy for me to get on top of the ball and apply force, driving it downhill and forward on a line.
The second thing I want her to fix is the way her foot lands. So when you see her stride, she has a good long stride, her footwork is good, but when her front foot plants, it's stuck at close at about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and it doesn't get open until after she's released the ball. What I want her to do instead is I want her to land on her heel and start to rock through her landing, which is gonna allow her hips to open up earlier, which is gonna allow her upper body to wind up further. And then she's gonna get more rotational force from her hips through her core and into her arm. So she's losing some power for sure in the way she lands because her hips are stuck closed way too long.
All right, let's break this down and let me show you how the foot affects the knee and the hips and then acceleration. So watch my foot here. See how I plant and then I'm rocking through it, and it allows my toe and my foot and my knee to all line up towards my target early. Now let's look at hips. So look at Sarah first. Her toes and her knees are facing away from her target. Therefore, her hips are still stuck closed and they can't get through. Now, if you look at me, toes straight at my target, knees straight at my target, and my hips are almost completely straight at my target, and I haven't released the ball. That's a positive because it means my hips have gone first, which is amplifying force through my core and then up through my arm. All right, look at both of Sarah's feet. See how they jump at the end? Her right foot is behind her body, and her left foot is jumping as her hips finally open after she's released the ball. Now look at my front foot. It's planted, and it's allowing me to sort of pole vault energy over that front leg. And then if you look at my right leg, my back leg, it's unraveling. It's sort of unwinding as force is dissipating through my back hip. And so the problem is that Sarah's not getting credit for all the power she can produce. She's not transmitting it well from her foot through her hips to her arm. So she's leaving a lot of velocity on the table.
The third thing I want her to fix, she has some inconsistencies from one throw to the next on when her hands actually separate. So proper hand timing, whether I catch a fly ball or I scoop up a ground ball, is I need to have my hands together when this foot hits. And then my hands are gonna go through, they're gonna separate, and my arm action is gonna start, and it's gonna match the length of my stride. So we don't wanna have, we caught a fly ball and our hands have separated and now we hit, our arm's gonna be in position too soon and our body's gonna get out of sync.
All right, so we're gonna see one of these out of sync throws right here. So at this point, this is what I mean. Her hands are together and her back foot is planted. So that's when her hands should separate. And then her arm action is gonna be very consistent from one throw to the next. It's going to match the duration of her stride. Instead, what happens is she takes another step, separates her hands, stepping off her left, and now she's landed on her right, and she's actually ready to throw. But you can see her glove arm and her throwing arm are almost completely extended, and the result is going to be that her arm action is going to lengthen out, which is going to slow how quickly she can release the ball, and it's going to make her overall mechanics sort of be out of timing and out of synchronicity, which will affect how hard she can throw it as well. So we want her hands to still be together when her back foot strikes, and also to shorten up the amount of steps it takes because it also took her quite a long time to get rid of the ball.
The fourth thing I want her to work on is getting out of the habit. Sometimes she reaches with both hands on fly balls where she has to throw, and we need to stop that habit. When you have to make a throw, you want to make a one-handed catch. So I'm going to catch it, and then I'm going to bring it to my center as I start to move my feet, and then I'm going to go. That way, when I bring it to my center, throwing mechanics always start from the same point. So if I field a ground ball, I bring it to my center, and then we start from here. Fly ball, I bring it to my center, and then we start from here. We don't want to start our throwing mechanics from up here, because now this is a completely different arm action than all the other times that we throw. So I want her to practice when she's taking fly balls, just keeping this hand down to get out of that habit so that she can start to move more freely, making those one-handed catches when she needs to throw a runner out. And the last thing that I want Sarah to work on is sidearm. Especially in softball, the field is so much smaller. When you charge a ground ball, and maybe you're not playing that deep, it's very often the case that you might want to make a sidearm throw that's going to be quick, doesn't have to be as powerful, but you want to make a sidearm throw. Sidearm throws are also great for teaching shoulder blade retraction, which she needs more of. And it's also just a really important tool to have in the tool belt. Even though most throws from the outfield are going to be overhead, sometimes when you're running, and hey, I'm only 50 feet from second base, and I need to get it there quick, a sidearm throw is just as effective as an overhand throw, and it's going to be a lot faster. So I want her to start working and developing her sidearm throw, which is just something she hasn't worked a lot on in the past. Now, one problem with sidearm throws that I see with her and other players is that they still try to get above the ball when they have to let their arm go be beside the ball. On a sidearm throw, your hand needs to match your arm slot. We don't want to be throwing like this from a low arm slot. We want to be throwing here. When we make a sidearm throw, it's going to be more like a tennis racket or a pickleball paddle where our arm is going to extend and come up through the ball as we follow through, rather than trying to be on top of it even at this low slot. So we don't want to be here when we throw sidearm. We want to be here no matter which arm angle we select. All right, now I'm going to go over the throwing routine that I want her to do to work on all these issues, both on her practice days and in her pregame warm-up when she has games.
All right, so working on her scap retraction, pulling her arm back, shortening her arm action so it's more pulling back behind her body and less lifting. We're going to use the lawnmower drill, and we're going to use the rotation throws. These both are just going to help her retrain her arm as she begins to warm up so that it's less lift and more back behind her body, which is going to help get it in sync with her hips and her core. Next is the rocker drill, and this one is crucial for her getting her front foot and knee and hips to all open up more together, because we talked about her foot plant issue and how that keeps her hips kind of stuck closed. The rocker drill is great for getting her over that front leg. And the heel toe is probably my favorite drill for helping players land properly, where that front foot is rocking them open and they're getting their hips into a good position. And then lastly, the hot pause drill. This is going to help with her hand sink issues. So when she catches a fly ball or a ground ball and she wants to make that throw, this is going to help retrain her timing so that her hands are still together when the back foot hits.
All right, so that's it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. You'll also find my online softball throwing courses for all ages, beginner, advanced, fast pitch, and slow pitch. I occasionally work with athletes, but in general, I want everyone to follow my course first, which is going to apply to nearly everyone who has throwing mechanics issues or needs to improve their velocity. So for me, wanting to sort of filter through athletes who are actually going to work hard, if they finish my course first, then I consider working with them one-on-one, whether it's digitally or in person. All right. So thanks so much for watching. Be sure to follow Sarah Helen Davis on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever you want to follow her. She does an amazing job, and she's a really impressive athlete to follow. Thanks again. I'll see you here in the next video.